Good afternoon from New York, and welcome to the second day of the 14th Spiritist Symposium. I'm your host for today, João Korngold. This year, we are having a different type of symposium. We were supposed to be all together in lovely San Francisco, California, but due to COVID-19, we had to change it to a virtual format. But we are really excited with this new experience. For those who were watching yesterday, welcome back. And for those who are joining for the first time, don't worry. You can still watch yesterday's presentations on the Spiritist Symposium website or on the United States Spiritist Federation YouTube and Facebook channels. We had two beautiful lectures, Soul Searching, It is Time to Move Forward by Susana Simões, and Spiritual and Intellectual Growth of Humanity Hand in Hand by Luis Lima, and also a wonderful panel with very insightful lessons from the youth generation, conducted by Lígia Carvalho. But before we start, let's ask our friend Júlio Carvalho to conduct our initial prayer.
Supreme Intelligence of the universe, we ask you to give us all the wisdom that we need in order to incorporate the lessons of Christ in our lives, lessons of love, of charity, of giving. Give us the energy that we need in order to make the inner transformation and help become a better version of ourselves. Bless our activities for today so we can all be inspired in order to make our share in making this world a better place for all of us. So be it.
Thanks, Julio. So, the theme of the symposium this year is Soul Searching in a Technological Era. And this was chosen 1 year ago, well before the pandemic. How appropriate, right? So, this is the format. We will have a 30-minute talk followed by a 15-minute Q&A. Please send your questions during the talk. Then we'll have a 5-minute break. And after that, we'll have a panel, Spiritism, Ask Me Anything, where we'll be answering your questions about any topic in Spiritism. But let's start today's session by introducing our speaker, Flavio Zanetti, that will be presenting the role of technology in the dissemination of spiritual values. Flavio Zanetti has worked in the board of directors of the Allan Kardec Spiritist Society of Massachusetts in different positions. He acted as the programs director for the United States Spiritist Council and more recently helped found the Spiritist Institute, a nonprofit dedicated to disseminate Spiritism in English. He also contributes as a translator of printed Spiritist materials and with simultaneous translation for Spiritist events nationwide. Professionally, he's an engineering manager working for a multinational telecommunications company. He holds a Bachelor in Science in Engineering, a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology, and a Master's degree in International Management and Business Operation. Welcome, Flavio.
Thank you, João. Thank you, folks. It's so great to be here in this new format. I hope everybody can hear me okay. Before we start our activities, we'd like to express our gratitude, right, for the United States Spiritist Federation for all the hard work putting an event like this together. We've been, through several events, and we know how difficult and laborious this activity is, or the task is. So thank you for the invitation. Honored to be here, and wish my counterparts to continue a great event that started yesterday, and we'll hopefully be able to wrap it up by the end of today. The topic that we were given to spend a few minutes with you all is the role of technology in the dissemination or the spread of spiritual values. And look at all of us here, right? We are leveraging technology in order to get a little more in touch with Jesus' teachings. So not better than this, we could have gotten to really leverage technology in order to really learn more about the the teachings, learn more about Jesus' life and overall his teachings and his overall, lessons that he has left with us. So if you look at, nobody can really refute that our lives are constantly impacted or touched by technology, right? Every day we, drive our cars, we have air conditioning, we have heating systems, we have a lot of benefits today thanks to technology, right? So it's impossible not to take that into account into our daily lives. But I'd like for us to look at this picture very attentively or very carefully. What does it communicate to us? Are we scared, perhaps, that we sometimes spend too much time in front of our gadgets? Do we say a prayer when we wake up in the morning, or do we check our smartphones first? Great question. The Pew Institute estimates that 1 in every 4 adults are addicted to their smartphones. I'm going to repeat that. 1 in 4 adults are addicted to these little devices that we have in front of us at our fingertips. But can we really say that technology is evil? Is that really the case? Can we say, is it good? Can we say it's bad? I'd like to use an analogy for us to answer this first challenge of the morning, right? So we all, either drive our cars or we ride in different cars. Can we say cars are good or bad? Cars are great because they make us go from point A to point B effectively, comfortably, right? It makes us get there. However, if we drive our cars without the proper knowledge, condition, right, training, capabilities, or know-how, we could cause accidents. Oftentimes we've seen the news that a 7 or a 10-year-old, right, ended up, hopping on somebody's or grandma or grandfather's car and then crashing into the tree in the backyard or something, right? It happened in our neighboring town here in Massachusetts. So, like any device or appliance, depending on how we use them, may be either harmful or helpful to our lives. And that's like everything else. I like to tell a story, a personal story, if you allow me to. Thanks to COVID, we're spending a lot more time at home, right? And one of my new hobbies now is gardening. One of the things that I've been doing is taking care of my yard and doing a little more gardening work and grass, taking care of that and all that. But I've learned the hard way that if we use too much fertilizer, that's actually not good for our grass. So it's a device, it's a technological advancement that if we don't know what we're doing, it can create some harm sometimes, right? That's the essence of this. So technology per se is not evil. It's actually very helpful and gives us a lot of comfort and benefits, so to speak. So moving on, I'd like to share a study by the Guardian Research that it showcases 78% of the families that they interviewed suggest that technology keeps them together. And once again, I'd like for you to pay attention to this picture. We have a couple and their 3 kids. They are in the same environment, in the same place at home. But can we say they are all connected? They're all talking to each other? They're all productively spending time with each other? Precious time, nevertheless, that we've learned through Spiritism, that we are able to practice Jesus' teachings in our own family setting. But oftentimes, sometimes more often than not, we miss the point thanks to the overutilization of technology per se. So this is an example where technology is causing more harm than good. We're missing the point with the use of technology in this piece, right? So I'd like to, call out for the recent, dynamics that are happening in our society. And I'm sure you've all heard the Black Lives Movement, or the Black Lives Matter movement, rather. And the one thing that I like to mention about this is that before, a lot of social movements happened, and they took a long time to happen, right? But technology is playing a very different role, a very important role in this movement altogether. If you look at these pictures, we have folks from all over the world that have joined the movement, thanks to technology, from Palestine, from Italy, to England, to Seoul, South Korea, to Australia, to China. It is a global movement towards equal justice and towards the treatment of our fellow human beings as if, or the same way, we would like to be treated. Which, by the way, that's one of the Christ's golden rules, as we know it, right? So it's one of the characteristics of a good moral person, which we will touch later on in the presentation. So we cannot take into consideration the role that technology played, social media, internet, the broadcasting of information that happens super fast, right? These days, whereas in the past, these types of social movements would have taken a much longer time to come to fruition. Totally different tangent here. I'd like to mention Adrienne Haslett Davis. She was one of the Boston Marathon survivors. And here's how technology is really helping her go back to becoming or to continue being a ballroom dancer. If you look at the role that technology plays in the medical field, physicians are doing much better diagnosis and more effective treatment to their patients thanks to the use of technology. There are continuous development of medical devices that leads to more lives being saved. We know that, right? We turn on the television, we look at the news, new medical, devices here, medical research there. That's thanks to the use of technology, folks. The IBM, the company, has developed this supercomputer called Watson that is better at diagnosing cancer than physicians themselves, because the amount of data that's required is huge. So it would have taken physicians a long time to go over the books and research and combine and benchmark those initiatives so they can really come to a diagnosis. Whereas the supercomputer does that much more effectively and much faster, as we know. Also, from the medical research and technology, from tech, advancements that we can say, specific bandages, ankle braces, or larger devices like MRI machines, and in the case of Adrienne Haslett Davis, robotic limbs that made a huge positive impact on people's lives. So I would say that technology is really helping people in these aspects of lives as we know it, right? Continuing, right? In the field of education, we now have the ability, or the capability, I should say, to have virtual meetings. We're all living through COVID times, and here in Massachusetts, they've transitioned all the school system to being virtual. So there are more capabilities, I should say, whereas imagine if we did not have technology to live these difficult times. So there are, or there have been, inventions of game-like apps that further motivate students to learn more. So at the end of the day, what we can say that technology has this tremendous, or is making tremendous opportunities to make learning more exciting and enjoyable in terms of teaching, in terms of student engagement, and etc. What about, advancements in space? Yes, that happens too. Satellite communications. A lot of us here, or some of us here, I should say, are probably following this from different countries, different continents. And the way we're able to do that is based on satellite connectivity, thanks to space research, thanks to benefits in telecommunications, geophysics, and all those things combined. So moving ahead, we have to give really thanks and be grateful for all the advancements that we've had in the agriculture. Higher crop productivity, decreased use of water, fertilizer, as I mentioned, on my grass, in my backyard, pesticides, leading to lower food prices. We're now able to really have calories at a much cheaper price than before. Are we using that to really contain or eliminate famine or hunger in the world? That's a separate discussion that we get there to in a minute. But at the end of the day, technology here has paving the way so that we as human beings can live better than before, including agriculture. If you look at what we do from a natural disasters capability, yes, same thing applies. We're able to do a better job planning, working with engineers, really having technology give us a better, really condition overall to predict these natural disasters, leading to more lives being saved. And we continue with the advancements in transportation. Yes, technology is good for society. Look at the things that we have today: the ability to fly places, the ability to really shorter commute distance because of our cars or the equipment that we use. Yes, this is leading to less effort or stress on people. Self-driving cars, high-speed rail, and all that. But hang on a second, folks. Wasn't this supposed to be a spiritist talk as opposed to a technological talk? Yes, both. And this leads us to advancements in health that we've seen from technology. This leads to folks spending a lot of time being somewhat missionaries, developing and researching and inventing capabilities to really further develop conditions and benefits for human lives. We have that too. It really makes our lives easier. Yes, it does. We see that, right? With advancements, as I mentioned before, we can now get together with our Spiritist centers through virtual capabilities. We can really get closer to teachings. Before, if I can make an analogy here, right? In Kardec's time, it was a lot more difficult to have access to books, to materials, to information. Now, we turn our phones and we can search pretty much for anything that we feel like reading about or getting more knowledge about. So it is making our lives easier. It is really removing the stress that we have in order to really get to the destination, get to the finish line. And ultimately, it's helping us connect more with each other. The story that I'm sure we've seen several times, right? Before, if you moved to a different country, you had to go, several ways to be able to make a phone call or to be able to really get in touch with your loved ones. Now it's practically, a touch away or touch away. You can really have connectivity. You can see folks face to face. You can get closer to their emotions. Social media is helping us get a little more closer to what's happening in the world. Internet and communications in general. We've talked about some of these virtual meetings that we see now. Churches and Spiritist centers are conducting these meetings because thanks to COVID, right? We have to really abide to social distancing, professionally, academic, and overall. These are some of the major areas that I'd like to share that technology has really helped us be better. It has really helped us be better human beings or connect with each other more. But one thing that I'd like to ask, if we connect the role of technology with the spread of spiritual values, are we doing that? Or I should ask, are we effectively doing that? One thing that I'd like to highlight is that before technology, I should say, our circle of influence used to be about, a couple of dozen people. Used to go to work and this and not both parents used to work and used to be in our own villages. And so the amount of folks that we would interact were a lot more limited than these days, right? So thanks to technology, everybody's watching our lives now and seeing how we behave, seeing the things that we do. More than ever, folks, we have an opportunity to make an impact on many more people's lives, serving as examples to folks by sharing and, most importantly, living our spiritual values. My mom used to ask me, son, do you know when you can change somebody's life? And I would go, sure, mom, I can help her do this. And no, son, you cannot change anybody's lives. What you can do, however, is be a model so they can see you and say, oh, what is so special about John? What is so special about Julia? What is so special about so-and-so? Maybe I should look into that as well. So that is the spread of spiritual values. That is really leveraging technology through what we're doing here, through our social media posts, and through the folks that we interact virtually and all that. But then I invite you, not now, but maybe later, to go look at all of our posts, all of our social media posts. Are we really spreading spiritual values? Or are we leveraging that as a tool to really foster more issues? Not to really get into more details there. I'd say that I would love to only leverage my tools, my social media tools, to spread spiritual values. I would love to. But at the end of the day, the heat of the moment, sometimes we put a comment in there. I regret doing that. Sometimes we say something that, oops, I shouldn't have said that. Or sometimes we made a really post or a like or a dislike on social media that's I should have been more, specific on that piece. So at the end of the day, technology can definitely help spread spiritual values. But we oftentimes don't leverage that tool to its utmost, potential, I should say. But hang on a second. What are spiritual values anyways? Can we say spiritual values are the same as moral values? What's the difference between them? Jesus said, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will also be." And if we align the concept of values with treasures, our professor, our teacher is telling us where we keep our treasures, that's our values. And if these treasures are really taking us forward, are really bringing us together, closer to God, that's what those spiritual values are, folks. Right? That's what we can really tie to spiritual values. But hang on, Flavio. Jesus also said that a little before that in Matthew 6:19, if I'm not mistaken, do not lay up yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. So he's giving us the guidelines that our spiritual values or our treasures should be the ones that will keep towards our spiritual lives, that will take with us from this life to the spiritual life and to the next lives. As we know and we learn from Spiritism, this is not our unique life, right? This is only one of our multiple, physical existences, as we know. One thing that I'll tell you is back from Allan Kardec's works on the characteristics of a good moral person. Kardec himself spent a good chunk of time in real estate in the Spirit's book talking about the characteristics of a good moral person. And I invite you all to open up your Spirit's book. It's question 918. And then Kardec starts by saying this: truly moral or good moral individuals are those that practice the law of justice, love, and charity. And guess what? He doesn't stop there. He continues in its most complete purity. When I first read this, I remember my feelings. I said, oh my God, this is not just, hey, I'm fair. I love people, but not everyone. I'm charitable, but not everywhere, all the time. No, we have to practice those three things: justice, love, and charity in its highest degrees of purity. What does that mean, right? That means that we need to look at justice for everyone, not only our own justice, not only for justice from those who are close to us, not only justice for those who are like us. By all means, no. We need to love everybody unconditionally, not just those that love us, not just those that really follow the same footsteps as we do, right? And charity, not only helping those who are in dire need and open up my wallet and give them a couple of bucks. No, that's just one of the simplest forms of charity. Sometimes charity, which we can translate into love in action, is a phone call. Sometimes charity is leveraging technology these little devices that we have in front of us to call somebody that we haven't spoken in a while, and then we've made a mistake back in the days to ask for forgiveness, right? Sometimes charity is to look at ourselves, you know what, I still don't know how to do these things, and acknowledge that and find ways to get better at it, to remove all those things that really blur our vision sometimes, like pride and selfishness, and really be charitable to our own selves. And starting, I will remember that, starting with our own loved ones in our family setting. I'm going to repeat that. Starting with our loved ones in our family setting. Because all the technology in the world is not going to help us get better in our own matrix of society, which is family. Speaking of which, Mother Teresa used to say that if we were to fix our families, all problems will go away. She said that. So that's a laboratory. That's our work in action that should be there. If you remember the picture I shared before, long time ago, the 78% of families think technology brings them together. Let's not fall in this trap, folks. Let's spend quality time with our loved ones, right? This is charity to ourselves and starting in our own families. Continuing on Kardec, he goes, those possessed, those that are good moral people, right? Possessed by the sentiment of charity and love for their neighbors, do good for its own sake, without hope of reward, and they sacrifice their self-interest through justice. There's a lot of things happening in the world today, as we know it. Just turn the television on, look at the news. There's a lot of protests and all that, right? So if we look at this, and some people even forego themselves, their self-interest, through or helping really bring justice to others, that's the sentiment of charity that Kardec gave to us 160 plus years ago. And he continues, right? They're good, these good moral people, they're good, humane, and benevolent. They're good, right? The goodwill towards everybody. Because they see, look at this in red, folks, they see their own brothers and sisters in all humans. Let me ask you a personal question now. Do you or do we see our brothers and sisters in all humans? We do, as long as the person does not criticize our way of working, our way of living. We do, as long as that person didn't vote for so-and-so. We do, as long as folks, it's time to do better. We can do better. It's time to remove as long as. It's time to remove those what ifs. Because the true moral good person that Kardec is talking about here are doing these things without what ifs. They're loving, they're being charitable, they're being just and fair across the board in its most complete levels of purity. Yeah, Flavio, I get it, but you don't know what I'm going through. You don't know my family. I don't. You're right, I don't. But until we start seeing our neighbors, the next ones, the next that are close to us, as our, really brother and sister of ours, it's going to be difficult for us to take the next step. It's going to be really difficult for us to really continue with the sequence here that Kardec mentioned, right? That we need to forgive. The more vindictive we are, the farther away we are from God. And as we learn from Spiritism, the closer to God that we get, the better lives we live. Notice I said better lives, not lives without problems, because our problems, the obstacles, are going to be there. We're not going to remove them tomorrow, but they are the ones that help us get better. See the dichotomy there, right? And we have to be thankful for them too, because they keep us on a short leash. I mean, I just asked my wife, hey, what are the things that Flavia could do better? She'll give you a list of 100 things that I could do better. I'm sure we have our own development areas that we need to do better. And sometimes these development areas, they only come here after we encounter a problem, after we face a difficulty, after we face an issue in our lives, right? And of course, I don't have enough time to go every single paragraph here. That's why I'm inviting you to go and look at question 918. But the last paragraph, Kardec says, this is his comment, right? Finally, those good moral people respect in others all the rights that the laws of nature have granted them, as they would desire their own to be respected. Folks, this is one of the most beautiful treatises that Kardec has left us, giving us the necessary steps for us to really achieve or drive our moral aptitudes, for us to really leverage and become good moral citizens. And thankfully, technology can help us with this, either through studying, either through access to information, either through really talking to people that are remote from us, either joining a cause, joining a nonprofit organization, whatever it is that we decide to do in order to be better at what we're doing, and following Spiritism, this great progressive body of body of knowledge that gives us the steps to become better people. And this treaty that Kardec has left us is an amazing step towards that. Kardec also mentions that while intellectual progress is always happening across the world, development and research and all that, selfishness and pride hinder our moral progress. And Louis touched a little bit on this yesterday, but I'd like to mention this again because this is so important that people, and we oftentimes, disconnect them, right? Oh, so I'm sorry. We oftentimes can disconnect them. Yes, intellectual progress is important. It's happening. But the most important progress that we can achieve in our lifetime is our own moral progress. And the more we have selfishness, the more we have pride in our lives, the more difficult that progress will be there to become. So look how interesting this quote by Emmanuel, in the book Emmanuel. He says that technological progress has come to shorten humans' labor time so that they could devote themselves more to spiritual causes. When I read this, I was telling myself, how come I have not read this before? And this was the first time this really opened my mind when I was studying for this talk here. I've read that book a couple times before, and then I never caught this before. So Emmanuel is telling us that yes, technological advancements are going to happen, and we have to be thankful for them. As I mentioned before, the advancements in medicine, health, spaces, and communications, and education, and all that. Yes, they do help us. We know that. But at the end of the day, if we should leverage the time that we have left now, we don't have to commute 3 hours to get to work, some of us, thankfully, right? We don't have to spend too much time in laborious activities. Now we have technology advancements, automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning that can help us get there. But what are we doing with the extra time that we have in our hands now? Are we devoting that towards our spiritual causes? Are we spending that time to really help others, to really foster our spiritual values? When we put that into perspective, it's a wake-up call, folks. It is our alarm clock buzzing in the morning. Wake up, right? We got to think about this differently. We have to. Because Leon Denis, the great Frenchman, he himself that took Allan Kardec's works, expanded that, and developed a lot more philosophical, capabilities. He researched mediums, communications, wrote several additional books, and he was a true collaborator of the Spiritist ideals. He really deepened the aspects of Spiritism, and I would say that above all those things, there's only one thing that we need to really stuck with Leon Denis, the Frenchman, is that he helped consolidate the overall Spiritist movement in the early decades of the 20th century. Look at what he said in this book called Christianity and Spiritism. It is not enough to develop intelligences. It is necessary, however, to form character, strengthen souls and consciences. Knowledge must be complemented by notions that shed light on the future and indicate the fate of human beings. For us to renew a society, or for societies to be renewed, we need better and renewed human beings. And technology, folks, is the driver. Technology nowadays is the vehicle. It's the tool that's helping us, or should be helping us, really achieve greater spiritual values in our days, in our daily lives. With this message, the Leon Denis really helps us stitch all those pieces together. The advancements of technology, the connection with our spiritual values, the ability that we all have now to impact sometimes millions of people. We hear stories about people putting videos on YouTube that all of a sudden that video is viewed by, dozens of millions of people. We see that all the time, every day, every week. We have now an opportunity greater than ever before to make an impact in other people's lives. And even though we may not be there face to face to extend them a hand, to really embrace them, to really share the love, share the empathy, really be there for them, we can always leverage technology. We can always, and should always leverage technology to really come together with these folks, to really bring justice, love, and charity overall towards our destination. Folks, I hope this has been helpful. I'm sure there's a lot of, I hope there's some questions that I would love to spend some time with you. And João, back to you, my friend.
Thank you, Flavio. Wonderful lecture. Thank you for sharing this knowledge on technology. We learned a lot. And yes, we do have questions. So let's start.
Let's bring them on.
We have people from Canada, from the UK, from Brazil, and from all over the US. So we have a great audience here today. So first question from Kirsten Santos. How can we create an individual system for ourselves where we can always nurture our spiritual values in a world with so many issues and things that distract us?
If I understood the question correctly, Kirsten, and a big love to you, my sister. We miss you dearly. Everybody's going to have their own practice. I'll share what works for me, right? I subscribe to some podcasts. And by the way, there's one that I'm going to make a little propaganda here. It's called Spiritist Conversations, where we really tackle Spiritist thoughts and topics, right? In a very off-the-cuff, informal way. I'm sure you've heard that before. But everybody's going to have their own system, as I mentioned. I like to receive in the morning emails from different places that can really bring the best of humankind. I subscribe to some email generation systems or platforms that give me the positive side of the news, right? I'll subscribe to some podcasts I mentioned before that I have access to information, that I have access to content that's uplifting. Content that really tells or shows the news, but from an uplifting perspective, as opposed to bringing the worst of human beings, right? So that's what works for me, leveraging technology in that area. Without leveraging technology, or maybe a little more, old technology, I bring a book every morning that I read a couple of paragraphs, Living Spring, Our Daily Bread. I do the same before I go to bed in the evening. One chapter a night I read before I go to bed. That keeps me connected with this spiritual knowledge and spiritual topics, right? Every single day. I know that the world's out there, and it's inviting us to do a lot of things sometimes we may regret later on. So the more we stay connected with these spiritual values, right, the less prone we are to make wrongdoings or to really regret some of our activities in the future. I'm sorry, there's not like a one-size-fits-all approach to your question, but that has worked for me, and I'm glad to be able to share that.
Thanks, Flavio. Next, from our friend Bernadette Leal Kelsley. Flavio, can you elaborate more about the meaning of purity in action in moral individuals? How can technology help us to become more pure towards that moral perfection?
Thank you, Bernadette. Another, love to you from Southern California. I would say, I think I mentioned this a little bit, but I'll expand that. Oftentimes, our visions are blurred by the notion of love, but love expecting something in return. of justice, but only justice from those who are like us. Or charity, but the charity concept that we've learned, which is the monetary charity. If we start from that and really leverage research, leverage really success stories from other folks that really took those three, think of that as a three-legged stool, that took those three legs and made that stool much taller, much bigger, much more impactful. That's taking each and every one of these areas, right, to the highest purity of it. And by the way, every one of us, we have a different interpretation of that because we're in different conditions in all these things. But my invitation is, what if Jesus was here with us, talking to us? What would he say about the purity of love? What would he say about the purity of justice? What would he say about the purity of charity as he taught us? So technology can help us get that information closer to us. Technology can help us by engaging with other folks that are doing research, they have written books, they have published articles on those topics. And if you can stitch that and really corroborate with Spiritism, I believe that's a great strategy to get as close as possible to the purity degree of those three activities. Hope that's been helpful, Bernadette.
Thank you, Flavio. I'm sure it helped. So, next one. What we have learned in these 3 months of virtual life that can be used in the future for Spiritism?
Great question. I'd say that now we've had a lot more chance to do a practical research with our families. We all learned the importance of families, right? I know this is not a talk on family, right? But we've all learned that that is the place that we should focus our activities. Now we were, quote unquote, forced to spend a lot more time with our families. So to me, that's a practical, test of all of the literature that we have read in the past. That's one. The second of this is we all know that sometimes it's challenging to get people in the same place at the same time, right? To perhaps conduct a study or to spend time talking about spiritual or spiritist activities. We've learned that's possible. COVID has taught us that that's possible thanks to the use of technology. An event like this, right? Who would ever thought we could do something like this 3, 4, 5 years ago? Probably no one. I wasn't. And I worked with technology, right? For 25 plus years. I wouldn't have believed this was even possible if anybody asked me 4 or 5 years ago. So we've learned different areas of our lives can be applied to Spiritism even more differently or better than before. And I do believe that we as Spiritists are Spiritists 24 hours a day. We're not only Spiritists on Wednesday evening when we go to the Spiritist centers. We're not only religious on Sunday mornings when we go to church or when we really gather amongst friends. We are Spiritists 24 hours a day. So everything that we do, we have our Spiritist lens that has a little, addition to it. So COVID has taught us that we could do better, folks. COVID has taught us in practical terms, that we can move faster sometimes than we ever thought before. That's the few areas that I think that, this quarantine or this moratorium on getting together with folks have taught us. But if I could wrap it up in one more thought, this has taught us not to take a lot of things for granted. I'd like to quote a phrase that there's no author for it. It goes like this: the greatest things in life are nothings. If we stop to think about that, the greatest things in life are nothings. How much do we miss embracing each other? How much do we miss that gathering, that face to face? How much do we miss spending time together with our loved ones? How much do we miss our social activities? This has given us a huge lesson that we have to take with us for the rest of our lives and our next lifetimes. To me, that was the most important teaching that COVID has left us with.
Fully agreed. Okay, next one, a long one. Yesterday, we heard about the intellectual and the moral growth sometimes don't happen at the same time. Would you say that technology is much more advanced and we are super behind in the morals? Do you see this will change in the new era?
I don't necessarily agree that technology is much more advanced than morals. I would say that technology is more visible than some of the moral standings that we have nowadays. So I'll give you a couple of examples, a couple of statistics, right? There has never been so much volunteering work than today. Never in the history of humankind, human beings have volunteered so much towards other causes, towards the help and the benefit of their fellow brothers and sisters. There has never been so much interest in a movement that drives social justice than now. Are we there? Are we there at the finish line? No, we're not. But I show you some pictures. This has become a global initiative to really bring more peace and more justice for our fellow brothers and sisters that are facing oppression. So a lot of these things, they don't make the news sometimes. Technology advancements, they do. Self-driving cars, and I press a button and somebody, yes, I get that. But oftentimes, we don't spend enough time amplifying the great things that people do by themselves. The great things that sometimes some folks do, oftentimes people do, towards helping others, towards bringing more comfort towards others. There's some examples out there, but I don't necessarily believe or agree that technology is more advanced than morals. I think they go hand in hand. Sometimes one goes further, then the other one catches up, and so forth. Inevitably, as we learned from Kardec, intellectual progress is there. It's happened. It's there, and we, as a human, kind, as a society, have to catch up. That is for sure. And I believe the recipe. I believe the steps are there already. We don't have to wait for a new, a cause or a new. No, it's already there. Jesus taught us 2,000 years ago. Spiritism came to really even broaden our view and our perspectives so that we can really be more pragmatic towards our own lives. As I mentioned before, we are Spiritists 24 hours a day, not just religious Sunday mornings or Wednesday evenings, whatever day they decide to go to a Spiritist center. Once we really internalize that, the more aptitudes start to pop up, right?
Thanks, Flavio. Last one, okay, and it's kind of a follow-up to this last answer. Spreading spiritual values doesn't mean only to speak about them, right? Being kind, trying to be just, and spread justice is also. What else do you feel technology can help on spreading kindness?
Great question. There's a saying that goes, when you tell somebody something, you may convince them, or her, but when you exemplify that behavior, you drag them with you, right? So oftentimes in the past, we seeked salvation by the words of the Savior, not by his or her behaviors. I would say that even if we don't talk about it, but you live those through spiritual values, they'll be huge. They'll be way more impactful than speaking about them. And one area that I'll highlight and I'll mention again, we all have social media channels, one way or the other, through Facebook, through YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and all those platforms out there. If you're looking for areas that you can help others or spread spiritual values, let us look at our posts. Are they uplifting? Are they helping others? Are they bringing more peace or more division? Are they really making people's lives easier? Are they making people feel better about themselves? The moment we start asking these questions, and it's not easy, by the way, it's an inner trip. The more that we start asking these questions, so yeah, that comment wasn't really helpful to so and so. That comment may have offended so and so. That comment, guys, it's important that we are fair and love everybody. But let's start to be kind to everybody. I know that we can't love everybody yet, right? I wish I could see, but I'm not sure I'll be able to see, wings behind all of us. But definitely, we are at a point right now that we can and should be kind to every single one. No matter where they come from, no matter what their situation is, we should always be kind. We should always treat others with respect. We should always foster those behaviors so that those that are close to us are seeing that. Most importantly, if you have kids or nephews or nieces, the example that you're setting into that precious part of your life that God has granted you, so you could serve as an example and as a guide. So to me, folks, that's huge, right? So actions speak much, much louder than words. Yes, I'm not suggesting we should stop saying no, by all means, but we should live more than just say.
Thanks, Flavio. Once again, thank you very much for your presentation. It was really beautiful. For those that joined during the presentation, I saw a lot of people joined started late. You can always go back to the United States Spiritist Federation webpage, to Spiritist Symposium webpage, and watch the presentation from the beginning. So now we will have a 5-minute break, so you can breathe, get a glass of water, and then in 5 minutes, we'll start with our panel, Ask Me Anything. Please come back, don't run away, stay with us. We still have a very interesting discussion here, okay? So while we are on our break, let me share some news. First, you can find our Spiritist books at the United States Spiritist Federation bookstore new website, www.spiritistbooks.us. Make sure to browse it and get your book. And actually, we have some new arrivals. We are proud to announce the publication of the Gospel According to Spiritism, translated from the original French edition. This is part of the effort by the United States Spiritist Federation of publishing the 5 books of the codification. You'll be followed by the release of the Medium's book by the end of the year, and Heaven and Hell after that. So please go to the website. You have an opportunity to buy the books, and we didn't have a symposium that we were all there, that we could browse the books, but you can still go to the website and buy the books, and that will help the Spiritist movement, the United States Spiritist Federation. And I see that some people already went there, already bought some books, and we really appreciate it. But please help us keep the movement alive, okay? Next, we have every year during the USSF Symposium, we give an opportunity to the Spiritist Medical Association to make announcements of their activities. For those who are not familiar with the SMA, as it's called, here's a slide summarizing the mission of the organization. This year, due to the COVID-19 pandemic restrictions, the SMA has canceled its conference, and we're conducting conferences and webinars online. Please follow announcements in their website and Facebook page. If you like to receive more information of their activities, please send an email through the Contact Us link on the website. Next, we have in 2 years' time the 10th World Spiritist Congress, or the Congrès Spirit Mondial, that is going to be in October 2022 in Nice, France. It's going to be a beautiful event, as always. It's organized by the Union Spirit Française and Francophone and the International Spiritist Council. So you have 2 years to plan ahead. I know you always wanted to go to France, and that's a great opportunity. So we can all meet there and share the knowledge about the Spiritism with beautiful lectures and beautiful experiences. Finally, we have a great event 1 week from today, a lecture, a talk by Divaldo Franco and Juan Danilo, Fraternity, the Moving Wheel of a New Era. It will be a lecture that you'll be able to see both in Portuguese or in English with simultaneous translation. We will have 2 channels showing them. One in the Mansão do Caminho, it will be the original one with Divaldo talking in Portuguese. And on the YouTube of the United States Spiritist Federation, you have the opportunity to see the lecture with simultaneous translation by our friend Dan Assisi. So next week, Sunday, 6 p.m. New York time, 3 p.m. Pacific time. Don't miss our good friend Divaldo giving us an enlightened lesson, okay? You can always follow the United States Spiritist Federation on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, and even on Twitter. Please make sure to subscribe, to follow us, so you can see all the events we are promoting all the time, okay? Now, if you are all back, welcome back. So now we are going to have something a little bit different from previous year. We are going to have a panel called Spiritism, Ask Me Anything. We are going to be answering questions that you sent us through through Facebook, through our website. And we are very happy to have here with us for this Ask Me Anything presentation, Jussara Korngold, Dan Assis, and Júlio Carvalho. Jussara Korngold is the founder and president of the Spiritist Group of New York and the Spiritist Alliance for Books, which has the aim to promote and disseminate Spiritism in English. Mrs. Korngold is fluent in Portuguese, English, French, and Spanish. She's a published author and a translator. She's currently the president of the United States Spiritist Federation and general secretary of the International Spiritist Council. With a bachelor in economics and master's degree in finance, Mrs. Korngold works for the Brazil Child Health as its main executive, and she's also an executive board member of Grupo Mulheres do Brasil in New York, and more important, she's my dearly wife. Júlio Carvalho is the founder and co-director of the Spiritist Center Divine Light in Newark, New Jersey. He's a member of the Tri-State Spiritist Federation, where he works actively in the Department of Public Speaking. Mr. Carvalho participates in national and international congresses representing the United States and the Tri-State Spiritist Federation. Professionally, he's a licensed clinical social worker with 20 years experience in public speaking in the field of mental health, group administration, and emotional well-being. He works as a psychotherapist for compassionate care hospice. Academically, he has a bachelor in biology and a master's degree in social work at Kean University, our dear friend Júlio Carvalho. And Dan Assisi, that you saw yesterday, doing a much better role than what I'm doing today, speaks on spirituality and spiritism in the US and internationally. Known for a mix of irreverence and deep thinking, Dan shares a message of hope and love through rational faith that both inspires and educates audiences about our spiritual nature. Dan is a founding member of the Spiritist Institute and a board member of the California Spiritist Association. You can also find him as the host of the Spiritist Conversations podcast. Dr. Assisi holds a doctorate degree in education and a master's in public administration with a graduate certificate in public policy from the University of Southern California. Welcome all. I hope you're ready to answer very challenging questions about Spiritism. So, we are going to start with Júlio Carvalho. Júlio, creationists say there is a God who created everything and there is no need for evolution. On the other hand, science says that there is the process of evolution and God does not exist. What does Spiritism say?
First of all, thank you for all of those who were responsible in putting together this wonderful event. Thank you so much for having me. The creationists, they hold the stance that evolution barely plays any role to explain how everything started. So, according to them, we find the answers in the traditional Christian Hebrew Bible. On the other hand, scientists they consider a book of Revelation, such as the Bible, to explains the natural world. So they solve these burning questions by looking at science, by having science as their main tool of observation in order to make their conclusions and establish scientific facts based once again on observation. But there are so much contradicting aspects of both explanations because they are not complete. They are not comprehensible in the fact that they cannot explain all the different aspects of creation. And this is because they are situated in both extreme. You know, one relies completely in spirituality, and the other one relies completely on matter. And Spiritism, since is also a body of knowledge, tries to merge these two aspects of life by explaining that science is correct, but not yet complete. Because one of the main questions that scientists don't understand, and the creationists, they actually criticize this point of the science, is that you don't see the transition in evolution. For example, we all learned that, men came from monkeys, came from primates, and where is the transition? The transition between these different species. So Spiritism gives a very thorough explanation that the we are made up of a biological vehicle, which is our body, and we also are our minds. We as a spirit, which is just energy, and there is a intermediate part of us called the perispirit, which is a spiritual body for the mind, for the spirit. And all the transitions that occur, they occur in the spiritual plane. So the reason why we don't see any transitions between the species, it's because these transitions are made in the spiritual plane by highly evolved entities that are in control of evolution. So one aspect of the natural science of evolution is that you can have natural evolution and also controlled evolution that are caused by us human beings. So we also agree with that, but that controlled evolution is made by highly evolved entities who are in charge of our evolution. And spirits, they are instruments of the supreme intelligence, and therefore they are controlling evolution in order for us to attain our objective, which is perfection.
Thanks, Julio. We have a question here that was directed to Jussara. Jussara, when we act and our actions backfire, we often say that wasn't my intention. Spiritism tells us over and over that our intentions matter greatly. But how do we balance the impact of our actions when we have good intentions, but may be perceived or actually have a negative impact?
So, hi everyone. It's so great to see so many of you here. I've been following the YouTube channels and the Facebook, and I saw so many familiar names, and I would like to hug you all and to thank you for participating with us at the United States Spiritist Symposium. Murilo, your question is a very good one, but what we have to think is that normally many of our actions may be misinterpreted, and we have to pay attention actually to our intentions, like you refer to in your question. The intention of doing good is the most important thing that we have, and understanding that not everyone will think like us, that will have the same understanding, the same view of things like we do. They may have a different take in relation to actions, to our line of thinking. So as long as we are true to our hearts, and we are sure that we are doing the good thing, the right thing. And today, I mean, even if we only follow the laws that we have in society, we already have a very good idea of what is right and what is wrong, and what we should do and what we should not. But if we add to that the natural laws, the law of God, they are going to be our sure guide in the way of us better behave ourselves. So go with your heart and have faith and continue doing and trying to do the good work. And if the world is not appreciating it, just keep on doing. We all along the line will have to amend ourselves and try to become better each and every day.
Thanks, Rosada. Then, at a time in the world where current events change at a feverish pace, how important it is to find peace of mind, and what is a simple practice to achieve this peace in our daily lives?
Hello, everyone. Greetings from California. It is great to be here with you virtually. Carla, thank you for that question. That is a very interesting and pivotal question for all of us, especially when we're taken by so many world events happening right now. We have the pandemic going on. We have this quest for social justice and the general reformation of our values taking place, and that can be very bumpy sometimes and very chaotic. And I think your question goes to the heart of the matter. It's really about our internal environment. Because unless we find peace with ourselves and within ourselves, we are going to struggle mightily with being able to make the world a better place. It's a necessary requirement. We cannot fix, so to say, the outside world without first fixing the inside world. I'm often reminded of the beautiful passage of Jesus when he calms the storm. We find that in Mark 4. Everybody is freaking out with the storm outside. He is sleeping on the boat because he's so resolute. He's so calm within himself that things are going to be okay, that he's then able to come and calm the outside storm. It's kind of an example for us. We need to control and work on the things that we can control, and that's our perception of the world and our understanding of things. And when we use that knowledge, the knowledge that we outlive this physical body, that we are immortal spirits that are going to also outlive all these challenges, we can calm ourselves down, and then through example and through our own behavior, we can help the world become a better place. So at the end of it, we really just need to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves, and in doing so, we can help others. And how do you do that? Well, that's going to be up to you. Flavio mentioned some of his techniques. He makes sure he starts the day intentionally by reading some positive and uplifting things. Some folks might pray. Some folks might do some mindfulness exercises. Find something that brings you back to the essence of who you are. I suggest just thinking of yourself as an immortal spirit every day, that you're here, reincarnated to solve problems and figure things out, and center yourself. And when you do that, the world will seem a much easier place to navigate. And that's one of the beautiful things that Spiritism brings us, is that greater perspective to understand why we are, where we are, and how we are in the current times.
Thanks, Dan. Second round. Julio, how do we reconcile the law of destruction and the necessity of war with the current civil unrest and the Black Lives Matter movement?
I think my friend refers to the third chapter, the third part of the Spirit's book, the sixth chapter, the law of destruction. And there we see that for us who are going through this period in our evolution, a war is actually necessary. And not because it's a law of God, but rather a consequence of our moral evolution. And the fact that there are those protesting, I think what we cannot lose sight, it's the fact that our leaders are not our leaders. Our leaders are actually our servants, because we pay them through our income tax for them to serve us. And to protest is a civil right that we must exercise when the law that we are paying politicians to abide to and to create them in our favor are not being respected. So in that way, to protest is actually a sign that people understand their right, and in order to change what is not in accordance with their well-being. So we can reconcile the law of destruction, that the old rule, the old ways of doing things must be overcome. It's a challenge, of course, because unfortunately we are obliged to see these occurrences from time to time happening again and again. Yet, old established rules are difficult to overcome. But as Martin Luther King used to say, we shall overcome, and we will. But it would take lots of energy, perseverance from all of us to make sure that we are respected regardless of our origin and skin color.
Thanks, Julio. Jussara, why do we see so many messages from spiritual benefactors about union and unification?
Well, if we take the examples of the spirits themselves, we see how much they work together. They understand, like we all understand, that we are just mere practitioners of Spiritism, that we are here to represent the work that Jesus has taught us to put in practice, the examples. So, in my opinion, I think it's very hard for us to, as individuals, to be able to have all the necessary talent and skills that require for us to do something. Let's take, for example, the symposium. The symposium, we have, a group of spirits led by Tanya, not spirits, sorry. Well, we are spirits as well, but a group of people led by Tanya Schwartz, that is the one that is on charge of putting the symposium together each and every year. But she cannot do that alone. I mean, she needs everyone that comes and do, the technological part, the ones that are going to come and do the talks, or like ourselves that are here replying to questions. So the idea, even when they talk about the religion of the future, is the idea of fraternity, of us working together, of us learning to love one another. That's why, in a way, they are always sending messages to inspire us in this process of, respecting each other, respecting each other's ideas, and contribute with one another to make those ideas grow. It doesn't mean that we have to be working all together in the same group. We may be in separate groups, but we are all combining for the same object, for the same ideal, in our case, the Spiritist doctrine. So whatever we have in terms of, different initiatives that we have here and there, those initiatives, they actually sum up with each other. And the more we collaborate, the more we are together, the more we will see better results, and we'll be actually showing the spirits that we know how to work with each other, how to grow with each other, and how to contribute for the work that do not belong to us.
Thank you, Jussara. Ben, can you talk to us about how the Spiritist consoling doctrine helps coping with the high rate of suicide, especially amongst veterans, 22 a day approximately? Thank you.
Hey, Gustavo, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thanks for the question. That is a very timely question, not only for veterans, but for the world at large. You can see that we are struggling a little bit with this. We are losing hope and faith at times because we are only seeing that which is right in front of the eyes. And it's hard for us to really find that sense of fulfillment and belonging when we think that only the here and now matters. So I think what Spiritism does so well, again, is to help us zoom out into that wider perspective and understand that we are living one of our many lives, and that we come to face challenges and tribulations so that in the process of doing that, we'll grow. And when we are assured of that, when we are reminded that there is more than meets the eye, that's more than just this what we see here in our physical lives, then a certain sense of comfort and understanding kicks in. Even if it doesn't take all our pains away, when we realize that we are immortal spirits just temporarily donning the physical body, and that there is a God who watches out for us and who would never give us a challenge beyond our means to meet it, otherwise it wouldn't be a good and kind God, we realize that every challenge we face has a solution. It might not be the solution we want, but there is one. And when we are able to refocus on that, we understand that there is a way out for every challenge that we face, and that we have a lot of friends and a lot of leverage to solve those things. We have a lot of friends who can help us visually and invisibly as well. So that helps us better have sense of our place in the world, and remind us that that we really do not or should not pursue that very permanent solution for a temporary problem. So I think it's one of the great gifts that Spiritism gives us, is this ability to remind ourselves that everything is going to be okay. We have lived many lives before, and we have survived 100% of our worst days, and we are going to do that again. And if you're ever feeling down, make sure you reach out to people, talk to them about it, help them walk you through it, just so that you feel connected as well. There's the suicide hotline, there's all different kinds of support systems, but let people know. And know that we appreciate you, and all those people who love you in this lifetime and in the other lifetimes you have, love you and support you no matter where you are, no matter how you are. So zoom out. Remember, you're immortal spirit. You got this. You can do this.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, third round. Julio, we usually study communications that are more than 50 years old. I ask, where can we find new recent communications from superior friendly spirits?
Thank you, Luis, for your question. Well, every philosophy, every science, every train of thought should be first covered through the basic part. Meaning, whenever you start school, you don't start school in college, you start school in kindergarten. So we should start with the books that started this philosophy. The 5 books: the Spirit's book, the Medium's book, the Gospel According to Spiritism, Heaven and Hell, and Genesis. And then you have the classical authors who came after Allan Kardec to broaden his point of view. And once we have the basics, I believe then it would be a wise thing to starting reading things that are more current. And there are many books that have been published this year alone. But we are getting almost to the point in which there is just too many books being published to the extent that you cannot catch up the reading. And the thing is, when you read a new book without understanding the basics, there is the possibility of you being more confused than being enlightened by the information you're reading. Or the other possibility is that because you don't know the basics, you would not absorb all the knowledge from a new good book. So our suggestion is always start with the basic. And what I mean the basic, it's not because the information, it's basic. It's just because that's where the information started. Back in 1857, it was when the information was compiled, because what we're reading there are natural phenomena that has happened throughout all history. But then you'll be more prepared to read new books. And there are plenty of them coming out every year.
Thanks, Julio. Okay, so we have a question from Grace from Brazil, and I think that I'm going to ask Jussara, but I'm going to ask her to answer in a general sense, because I know a lot of people are having the same questions and the same trouble that Grace has. So she says, I have been receiving this obsession treatment for a long time at a Spiritist center near my house. Yet because of this pandemic, there are 3 months that I have not attended the sessions. Is this a problem for the treatment?
Oh, hi, Grace. I saw some of your questions here and many other questions referring to the mediumship meetings, the works of this obsession in Spiritist centers. Actually, we have to remember that all the work on mediumship, they are very important in the sense that we can assist all of those that look for us in our Spiritist centers, and also the spirits that many times we go to communicate. But we have to understand as well that all of that we are going through now is not something that just happened by chance, and that the divine providence has no input on it. So the spirits, or the good spirits, I mean, already know that, or knew that we were not going to be able at this moment to attend the Spiritist groups, Spiritist sessions in person, which us from the Federation, United States Spiritist Federation, actually emphasize, the need for us to pay attention, to follow the laws, and to be careful with our attendance, and actually only open back the Spiritist centers when our government, the state governments, are going to be in agreement with that will not put a risk not only to ourselves, but even to the Spiritist movement in general. So if there's something happening that may happen in a particular house, it's going to stain the name of Spiritism. So we have to pay attention to that. So don't worry, because all the good spirits that are actually following your case, that are helping you in this treatment, they have not abandoned us. Actually, in fact, I'm telling people that from my perception, I have never felt so much the presence of good spirits around us like in this moment that we are living, because it is a state of emergency. They know what we are going through in terms of, our inner emotions, and everything that we are going through, the insecurity that we are, the anxiety that we are going through. And on top of that, like you mentioned, well, the spiritual aspect of, spirits that may be spiritually attached to us, that we also call obsession. So just continue doing what you have to do and what you have learned in the Spiritist Center, even while you are receiving this kind of treatment through this obsession. It's always going to be, bring prayer to yourselves. And when we say prayer, it's not saying words by heart, but actually talking with our hearts with God. Try to be as much in peace as you can, and trust the divine providence that they are taking care of you, and you are not going to be without this kind of assistance that is required for all this process of this obsession. But we have to remember, a process of obsession is never one that can be fixed overnight. Sometimes, it comes with us for many incarnations. So be patient, continue the good work, continue, connecting yourself to God, to the good spirits, and be sure that you are going to be assisted even in your own home. We are all going through the same. We all need this kind of assistance from the spirits. So, but I'll be remembering you, I'll be remembering your name, and I'll be praying for you myself as well.
Thanks, Rosada. Then, a very generic question and a very important one. What do you think is the biggest challenge on becoming a Spiritist?
A generic question for a generic guy. I love it. So I think that the biggest challenge to becoming a Spiritist is the biggest challenge of becoming a better human being, is having the desire, the intention, the discipline to practice that which you think and know that you have to do. It's about exercising your virtue. So I think that for Spiritists in general, if we get more specific, it is this idea that now that we have access to this wonderful world of information and a higher perspective from the spirits, that's enough. So having access to information is a great and wonderful step to becoming ourselves more enlightened and have a better perspective on things. But the real challenge is, what are you and what am I going to do with that information? How are we going to put that into practice? listening to talks like this and have these smart people over there answering questions is a wonderful thing. But at the end of the day, it's about you. It's about what are you going to do with all of this, and what are you going to do to further your studies. Listening to talks is a wonderful thing, but what are you reading? What are you regurgitating on? What are you grappling with? What are you going to apply in your daily lives? I think that's the biggest challenge, because change is hard, right? We all want change, but many different ways. What we really want is other people to change, and that doesn't happen. What really happens is us changing, and changing in inner change is really, really hard. So I think the greatest challenge is for us to literally, or figuratively speaking, put our money where our mouth is and do the things that we want others to do and that we want for the world ourselves. And that's super hard, really difficult. Looking inside, as we all have been talking about, it's really difficult, it's painful, gets wrought sometimes, but it is really worth it, because it's also great for us to acknowledge that when we change, it really does put us closer to becoming happier, and it does really put us closer to helping others become happier as well. So personal change, very, very hard, but very, very worth it.
Thanks, Dan. Julio, this question should be directed at your wife, who is responsible for the youth education and the United States Spiritist Federation, but she's not in the panel, so it goes to you. How can we address our teenagers nowadays with their belief that people they met online are real friends?
Thank you, Almeida, for your question. And I would suggest that you listen to yesterday's lecture. They were exceptional. We had 3 teenagers discussing these issues, and I think on this topic they have a better authority than I. Thank you so much.
Okay. Jusara, a basic question. Do spirits see everything that we do, so we have no privacy?
Thank God they don't. Because, basically, very much like ourselves. I don't know, when here I live in New York, so when I go out, I walk down the street, there are so many people around me, and I don't pay attention to them. If you ask me, who is the person that just passed by you, I probably will not be able to answer. I mean, many times, not looking to the cell phone, but just thinking, with, minding our own business. We are not that much paying attention. So the spirits will not have access to our moments, especially our moments of intimacy. This is what the Spirit's book tells us. And also there is a matter of frequency. Even if sometimes they would like perhaps to be there to interfere, they will not have access. It's very much like, when you are listening to a radio, and you have to attune to a certain station to be able to receive the message that station is transmitting. So in the same way, we as spirits, as with mortal spirits, we have different frequencies. So as long as we are in one frequency, it's going to be very hard for spirits to come and be next to us, especially in moments that we would like actually to have our privacy. And at the same time, we have to remember that not always, because of their level of involvement, they have the ability of going from one place to another as they wish to do it. So most of the times, when we have spirits around us, we are the ones that are inviting us with our thoughts, with our actions. That's why also following the answer, brilliant answer given to us by Dan, we see how important it is for us to start paying more attention to our inner transformation, to our level of thinking, because it is our level of thinking, our actions that are actually bringing spirits closer to us. So if we are trying to do the good things, we know that the good spirits are going to be here. But don't worry, they have not access. And those that could have, there would be the higher level spirits. They are very respectful of our moments and our privacy.
Thanks, Jusara. Dan, if we reincarnate, why can't we remember our past lives? A very common question asked every day at Spiritist centers. by
And
newcomers?
a lovely question too. I think that is a very great question in many different ways. But I think that once we start to think a little bit about it, it might make sense why we would not remember. Let's just take for a second that idea that we know that we're always evolving, that we're always getting better, that we're always growing, even if it goes turtle speed, right? If we're going really slow, we're always evolving. So when you take that into consideration, it means that what you see now in front of the mirror, you, yourself, it is the best version of spiritual you that there has ever been. So the more you look backwards in time, the less flattering version of you will see. So it's quite possible that if you were to remember past incarnations, you would really get bogged down by all the so not inspiring things that you have done in the past. So it is really a blessing. It's a blessing for us to have this veil of forgetfulness that allows us to focus on the here and now and not remember all the things that we have done in the past, which are probably more in the category than the yay category. So because of that, it's really a blessing. You would not want to know if people around you have been wronged by you severely. You might feel a lot of guilt. You might feel a lot of regret. It might prevent you from really trying new things out. So this forgetfulness really helps us focus on the here and now and not remember things that were done in the past and think we're still those people, right? We need to kind of cut the cord with our past and be in the present and look forward to the future. I know that a lot of people sometimes have this romanticized idea of past reincarnations. I mean, I don't know how many people I have met that have told me that they were kings and queens from the past. But you know what? There's only so many kings and queens in the past, so clearly not everybody was a king and queen. And if you were, it might not be a good thing, right? So focus on the here and now. But reincarnation helps us focus on who we are now and work for our future. Our past is just that. It's our past. So that's one of the reasons that the spirits tell us that we do not want to remember all our incarnations. To the extent we can and to the extent that we develop and are able to emotionally and spiritually support this knowledge, it starts to come back to us. And then we can process and in a way that it doesn't hold us back and it doesn't create unnecessary biases for us to move on. So I'm very glad, for instance, knowing myself that I do not know the things I've done in the past because they might not necessarily help me in the here and now.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, very good. Julio, if the pandemic and all the struggles we are seeing in the world is part of our transition to a spiritually healthier planet, do we have any hope to see Earth in transition in our lifetime? I have heard of the year of 2057.
When it comes to giving dates that actually ascribe a specific moment in time in which people will transform, we have to be highly skeptic. And reason being is because we do not control people behavior. You know, when it comes to scientific experiments to understand human behavior, it is so unpredictable because there are so many variables that are simply uncontrollable. So how to specify a moment in history where things will transform? You know, when the pandemic started, there were so many messages that now we are changing. Now there is a new order of things for the better. And we have to be very skeptic about these information of sudden changes because nothing in nature is sudden. It follows a process of steps, a process of little changes that within time we see the accumulation of those changes, and then we're able to see advancement. But to give a specific date, it's not a wise thing to do. You know, if you look at the current pandemic and the way it started, you know, in the city of Wuhan, you know, there's so much political talk now that, you know, how come a country of 1,450,000,000 people were able to contain the virus in one city, but it allowed that virus to go throughout the world. And after that, once the cities that went back to their normal life, they started their regular activities. There was no sudden change in morality. So, do I believe that the world will one day improve itself? Yes. Do I believe in ascribing specific dates for that to happen? No, I don't. Reason being is because the outside world will change when we change inside ourselves. And how many people have access to the information that we have right now? It's very little people on this planet that know what we know about changing ourselves. And what we have, it's materialism. And materialism says that we are here in the flesh and our purpose is to gain wealth. And if we're not wealthy, then we are miserable. And that thought actually creates all the social challenges we see in our lives. This was one of the main concern from Allan Kardec that he discusses in chapter 6 of the conclusion of the Spirit's book. And Spiritism should be one of the most powerful remedy to materialism. Because when finally people understand that our physical flesh is nothing but a vehicle and we are here temporarily to gain evolution, to move forward in intellect and morality, everything else will change. Everything that we'll do will change because now we know the focus, it's not necessarily material wealth, but rather spiritual wealth.
Thanks, Julio. And I think this is a very important subject. So I'm going to ask you, Sarah, a follow-up question that also came on this subject. So many messages have been shared in social media saying they are from high spirits with predictions of the future in this current situation. What recommendations you might have regarding these messages? Should we believe in all of them?
No. That would be the super short answer. We learned from Kardec in the Medium's book that we have to be very careful with all the messages. So I'm not only referring to the messages we are receiving now, because, the moment like this one, where everyone is so anxious, like we said before, where everyone is looking for answers. We had others. We had other similar moments. I mean, I told you that I'm here in New York, and I was here at the time of the 9/11. It was a horrific time to be in the city as well, and many people was really uncomfortable with everything that was going on. So I think, from what we learned from the advice of the good spirits and the spirits that have manifested themselves in the works of the codification put together by Allan Kardec, we learned that we have to be very careful with spirits, always remembering that we are all spirits, we are all immortal spirits. It's not because we have passed that immediately we are going to be knowledgeable about everything concerning the spirit world, concerning, the laws of the creation, concerning God. We just move to a different, let's say, reality without necessarily having gained much more knowledge. Our perspective, of course, is going to be a different one from the material perspective we have now, but not necessarily our understanding on things. And many things what we say is that although we are not saying here that the spirits that may be communicating, not necessarily knowing exactly what they are doing on their own volition to harm us or to deceive us. They are just sharing opinions. Like we have people with it, and when we talk amongst friends, each one of us, we have opinions, we will share our opinion. So we have to be very, very careful. Like Julio just replied, we have to be careful with messages that will be giving dates, will be giving predictions, because after all, we have free will. There may be indications of what is going to happen next, but what is going to happen next, it is actually in our own hands. So that's the beauty of free will. So let's be very, very careful. Let's not be just, super enthusiastically about, I read this message, and then we spread for each and every one without being sure that it comes from a good source, that is actually something that can, most of all, instead of satisfying our our curiosity, sorry, it's going to really bring peace to ourselves, to our minds, and so comforting messages will be much more important than messages that will give their take, and we cannot be sure. I'm very skeptical when it comes to this, and I advise everyone else to to do the same, and to be sure that they are actually coming from a good enlightenment source.
Okay, thanks, Rosara. Then, changing gears. André Luiz introduced us to the lower zones, which becomes a common topic in his books, but Kardec makes no reference to it. Why would this be the case? From our dear friend Sandra Mussi.
Sandra, it's great to see you. Welcome back to Canada. We are excited that you are back, even though you're in quarantine right now. I understand, probably locked up in a hotel in Canada, making sure that you're okay from having traveled abroad. Great question. So Kardec has definitely spoken about this transition that takes place after we discarnate, after we lose our physical body. This word that's commonly used among Brazilian Spiritists called umbral, it's sometimes even misunderstood by Brazilians themselves. Umbral in Portuguese means threshold, as in the threshold in your door. That area of passage when you pass from one room to the other, there's a threshold in your door. And umbral, that's what it means, threshold. So all of us go through this phase of adaptation and just getting acquainted to the spiritual reality when we shed our mortal coil, as Shakespeare would say, when we lose our physical body. So there's always that period of adaptation. What that adaptation looks like depends on our inner stuff, our inner makeup, and how we carried ourselves through our lives. And some of that, it's not pleasant, and some of that it is. So we all go through the sense of transition and threshold. Yet the word umbral has come to mean this negative experience that most of us are worried about experiencing when we leave our physical bodies. So we want to clarify that a little bit to remind everybody that we're all going to go through this transition. We might as well prepare for that. That's one of the great unknowns that we have not done a great job as a society tackling. It's the great certainty that we have. We are going to pay taxes, as Benjamin Franklin says, and we are going to, quote, quote, die. So let's start thinking about what it looks like and what is it that we can do to prepare ourselves to the great transition when it comes. Not that we are in a hurry. I myself still feel like I have 70 years to live in this life before I take that step. But that's why you're not going to see that term mentioned by Kardec, because it's a term coined by André Luiz. So, chronologically speaking, it was not there. But Kardec does talk about this transition that we make when we leave the physical body and return to our true home, the spiritual world. And so just a couple of thoughts there to kind of frame that consideration and frame the term, and as we prepare ourselves to deal with our spiritual identity.
Thanks, Dan. Julio, question for you that I know is dear to your heart. Can you explain a little more about reincarnation? Is there a specific number of reincarnations? Do we change countries, families, all the time?
Let's first analyze the word reincarnation. What you have here is a suffix "shan" at the end of the word, and whenever you see "shan" in a word, it means an action taking place. For example, conversation, aggravation, manipulation. And then you have the prefix "re," which means to do something over again, restart, recommence, repeat, replenish. And then you have another prefix "in," which means to enter. And then the root of this word, carne, means flesh. So what does reincarnation stands for? The action of re-entering the flesh. And we will re-enter the flesh as many time is needed, in order for us to develop ourselves intellectually and morally. And how many times will that how many times each one of us have to go through that process? Well, it all depends on how much effort we do, because the supreme intelligence, God, lives to us, our free will, how fast or how slow we get to our objectives. So there is no set of reincarnation. And I do not want you to actually, take note of the number I'm just going to give to you, but it's just an idea of how multiples are our reincarnations. Uh, now, there is a whole branch of science that studies human evolution, and the uh, paleoanthropologists, these are individuals that study our behavior throughout time. They say that the immediate being that gave rise to us, our ancestor, lived approximately 1,300,000 years before it actually became one of us, one of our ancestors. And if you divide that by the number 100, because usually we have one reincarnation every 100 years. So 1,300,000 divided by 100, it gives us approximately 13,000 reincarnations. So it's a lot to reincarnate. But we should not see this as a challenge, but rather we have multiple opportunities to evolve, to improve ourselves. It's going to take us a long time, but uh, whenever we are conscious, whenever we are aware of our responsibility, we don't have to wait for perfection to be happy. We can actually be happy the moment we become aware of what the purpose of our existence is.
Thanks, Julio. Jussara from Bernadette. Has technology been already used in mediumistic meetings? Example, typing during psychography or in another way?
Well, we have one kind of research in terms of mediumship that is called IT, instrumental transcommunication, that uses technology, and all the time they are trying to their research to to get in touch with the spirits, and this were something that was greatly developed and worked at during the 50s, and we even in this country we have great names that have invested a lot in this kind of research. Even our dear Thomas Edison, that was invested in telecommunication with spirits. Unfortunately, he couldn't do that in that lifetime. We hope that he will be able to do this later on. But there should be no impediment for us to use whatever means necessary we can use in order to receive communications. But we have to pay attention. Like, for instance, I can say for myself, if I would be, and actually I receive messages through psychography, but if I had to use the computer to do that, it would be a disaster, because I'm still, typing with my only two fingers, and I have to look for the words. And so there must be a reason why the spirits sometimes even advise us to use pencils instead of pencil, to have a pen, actually, to have several of them, because, it's easier for us to feel our mind freer to convey the message if we do not have to pay attention with devices. And like we all witnessed yesterday, we had some bumps during our transmission, when we have to depend on the device. But I think we have to keep an open mind, always remembering what is the purpose of the communication between these two worlds, which is basically to help and to assist us, the mediums themselves, and all the community that they are serving. And that's why the spirits come and communicate with us. So whatever the mean they will find appropriate to use, we will be adapting, we will be using. And I think that the more we evolve, the more we will be seeing other forms of communication. So, but for the moment, all the mediums that I know, even our dear Divaldo Franco, he uses paper and pencil to write his messages. Then he goes to the computer, depending on the process. But again, let's keep an open mind, but let's pay attention to not get too much enthusiasm about a new methodology, and actually a methodology that may imply in us losing connection with the spirituality. Whatever works best for us to, in terms of being well connected, to be actually a good recipient of the message, it is what actually going to work for us.
Thanks, Rosara. Dan, what's your favorite Spiritist book? What would you recommend for people just starting to know Spiritism?
All of them. Hi, Susanna. It's great to see you here. Really great to be with you. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful question. There are so many wonderful books out there that we can really avail ourselves of and try to grow. I think that it really depends on what kind of person you are and what is it that you like reading. Some of us like reading philosophical treatises and dive deep into that piece. Some of us like the scientific piece. Some of us like the stories that kind of stick with us through time. Some of us like more of the gospel. Some of us like more of, the overall considerations of everyday life. So I think it really depends. I can tell you that a couple of my favorite books are all in different places. I really enjoy a book called Paul and Stephen, which is an incredible historical kind of reevaluation of things. I obviously really enjoy the codification in general. I personally think that my favorite book is the Spirit's book because it has everything in there. It's not an easy read though, in the sense of you don't sit down and you read it in 3 or 4 hours, or it has to be like digested little by little. There are wonderful other books that have really impacted me as well. There's one by Leon Denis, right? The challenge of pain, being, and living in general, and anything that he has written. So there are many, many wonderful books. There's some wonderful books through the psychography of Yvonne Amaral as well that are wonderful stories and dramas that kind of really transport me back to whatever they are narrating. And that's one of the wonderful things about Spiritism is we have so much choice. We have so many possibilities of learning and entertainment at the same time, of uplifting our minds. And I think that many times we don't even know how many wonderful books are out there. So ask your friends, ask people that you think like you or think very differently than you to see what kind of books they have. So maybe we can toss it around and say, hey, Julio, Jusara, really quickly, João, one book that you like. Help Susan out.
The Spirit book.
Paul and Stephen.
The Spirit's book.
Uh-huh. Look at that.
There you go.
I hope that helps, Susanna.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, last round. We have 8 minutes left, so I'm going to start with Julio again. Julio, what does it mean that we are immortal spirits? It sounds so overwhelming. What would be the purpose of keep going? Do we become perfect and don't we stop there?
I just want to make a comment on Dan's question, about Paul Stephen. When I used to work in the jail system, I used to give that book to the inmates just to see, how powerful this book is in making people reflect on their own lives. And it's a pretty thick book. And some of these inmates, they barely finished high school. And, for you to read that book that's more than 600 pages, it's a challenge. And they used to read the entire thing and be amazed about it. So that way, that was one way I was actually measuring how significant that book is actually to engage people in reflecting upon their own existences. To be immortal, it's not the same as being eternal. To be eternal means you have no beginning nor you have an end. We had a beginning because we were definitely created by God, but we'll have no end. Now, the reason why you might think that it sounds overwhelming, it's because if you look at our current existence from only this frame of perception, of course you're going to think it's overwhelming because we live in an overwhelming school. The planet Earth, it's a planet that actually provides the lessons that we need at this current stage of our evolution. But have you ever considered that once we overcome this temporarily state of turmoil, then we enjoy happiness, we enjoy peace. But you don't have to wait for that. One thing that we always try to make very clear, that happiness does not come from what's happening on the outside. Uh, Happiness has in its foundation on peace. And how do we attain peace? We attain peace by fulfilling our obligations. You have an obligation towards yourself and you have an obligation towards others. And the minute you start feeling those obligations, you experience this emotion of joy and happiness and of peace. So we don't have to be perfect. But when we read the Spiritist literature, and we actually get to have a glimpse of what this future life looked like, these are accounts from the highly evolved spirits. They have very much they have difficulties in expressing to us their lifestyle, what they do, because it's such a higher order of things that they don't have material for comparison. This is why some of them keep using the word bliss. So consider in those terms, what is to be in a state of bliss, for eternity. That would not be overwhelming at all. It's just the opposite. But I know it's a hard thing to grasp. Just the same way, it will be very hard for people who lived approximately 150 years ago to understand our lifestyle today. It's almost impossible to explain to someone 150 years ago what a cell phone is. So how can someone who is ahead of us explain what their lives are? But they do explain that beyond of all their technological advancements, they have bliss, peace, and happiness. And that's not a bad thing to expand eternity on.
Thanks, Julio. Jussara, what is the definition of a good medium? Is this the amount of or different types of mediumship he or she shows?
No, not really. What we consider to be good mediums are the ones that are actually really sure why they are using their mediumship, and that should be to use in terms of, comforting and enlightening others. We may have people displaying great things in terms of mediumistic abilities, but if they do not come with these two main ingredients that we can only find if we are following the teachings of Jesus, if we are actually trying to work according to God's laws, we may be able to produce great phenomena that will even impress greatly our senses. But we are not going to be producing phenomena that will guide us and motivate us to our transformation, to our understanding, enlightening us in relation to what is the spiritual world and what is expected for us there. So in this sense, we have several aspects, and even a comment that I find it very interesting that Kardec makes in relation to mediumship. He says that mediumship is only important in terms of spiritism to bring us enlightenment that we need. So it's not the end. It can be actually a means for us to receive all the messages like we have received it, codified by him, but at the same time, it's only a means for us to achieve what is really necessary. It is to work on our own good. So don't be impressed by phenomena per se, because the greatest phenomena is going to be the one when we, with our words, with our possibilities, can console a hurting heart.
Thanks. Ben, for you. How can we exercise charity in times of so much division and with extremism gaining more adoption like it appears to be in today's times?
Hi, Andre. Thanks for the question. The answer is relatively simple. We exercise charity in difficult times, much the same way we exercise charity in good times. The only real difference is that difficult times just make it more natural and more obvious that we need to do more charitable acts and more charitable works. There is always an opportunity for us to be considerate of others, to step outside of our little boxes and think of the world from a different perspective and try to help somehow and give of whatever it is that we can give. That's charity for me, is making that love and understanding for others in place. So it's just making it obvious that we need to do a better job of thinking of each other, considering each other's points of views and what people need, and going and finding a way to meet them and help in whichever way you can. So whatever it is that you think you can give, do it. Ask other people if they need help. Solicit advice, and roll up your sleeves and try to help in whichever way you can. And nowadays, an easy way is just listen to people. Just be with people. Remind them that you love them, that you're there for them. That's an easy place to start.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, we reached the end of our panel. But before we close, I thank you all for your questions. We'll try to answer, for those that didn't have their questions answered, we'll try to answer them individually. And I'm going to invite each one of you to give your final words, starting with Julio, please.
We are living in moments of trial. And as Martin Luther King used to say, it's in darkness that we see the shining stars. So it's a great opportunity for service. It's a great opportunity for help. And by diminishing the pain of others, you'll be diminishing your own. So help.
Thanks, Julio. Jussara?
Oh, I'm so very grateful for this opportunity, for having shared this panel with my fellow friends, colleagues, brothers in arms. We are all in this together, and I feel very blessed, and I'm very thankful for all of you that have been following us as well, and making and sending your questions to us.
Dan?
I just want to thank all of you. It has been great to learn with you, with our friends here on camera, but also folks who are chiming in. I really do believe that this is what Spiritism is about. It started with questions and answers. It started with a search for understanding and trying to make sense of the world out there. We could do more of this. We can go back to our study groups and try to see what kind of wonderful things Spiritism brings us. And part of that will be to stir in our souls the desire to move forward and help out, as Julia said, and then be together, which Sarah said. So Spiritism brings us two big gifts, knowledge and companionship. And I hope that all of us can continue to do that online and offline. And thank you so much for having me here and for interacting with us via the comments and for what's to come.
Thank you all. And now, we thank you for watching. We ask you to fill out our survey. With that, you will help us improve for next year. The links to our survey is posted on social media. And we really appreciate if you can fill out the survey. It will really help us. Okay? Also, we'll be able to continue our thoughts about soul searching in a technological era, even after the end of the symposium today. On June 10th, this coming Wednesday, Diana Sisi will be hosting a special edition of the Spiritist Conversations post-symposium entitled, Can Tech and Spirituality Connect? With our special guests, Peter Hayes, Ana Moreno, Sunshine Beck, and Adrian Alvarez. Please don't miss it. It's going to be wonderful. Also, within the next month, the United States Spiritist Federation will be launching a new podcast in English, Spiritual Journey, directed at those that may not be familiar with Spiritism. Please help us spread the word when you receive the communication that the podcast is on. And finally, an invitation. Next year, we are going to have our Spiritist Symposium in Houston, Texas. We are ending the 14th Spiritist Symposium, but already thinking about next year ones. Keep your eyes open for more information, and we hope that next year we will all be together in person again. So now we are going to call Jussara Korngold for a visualization for world peace and health. Thank you very much to you all.
So we invite you all to close your eyes and to connect with the good spirits that have been assisting us during the moments we share these beautiful and precious lectures in order to enlighten our hearts. But we direct our thoughts to God, to the good spirits, to the benefactors that have been working on our planet nowadays. Where we feel so much anger, misunderstanding, prejudice, all emotions that set us apart from the creation and the Creator. We understand that we are still like little children on the path to evolvement, but we have been receiving so much light. And it is time for us, through our intentions, through our awakening, not to foster more and more misunderstanding and prejudice in our planet, but to send vibrations of peace, of love, because we understand that we are one and the same, that we are all here in search of love and enlightenment. So we pray to the good spirits, to our heavenly Creator, that we may feel their presence around us at this moment. All of us that for one way or another have been struggling, have been suffering, have been in doubt of the creation itself. Oh, Heavenly Creator, please help us to find the right motivation, to be encouraged, to display goodness, to show that our world is not only surrounded by negative things that the media are so quick in showing to us, but that there are great representatives here on earth working hard so that we can have harmony, so that we can once and for all, hopefully not in such a distant day, proclaim peace on our white and blue planet. But let us do our part. Let us control what it is within our reach to control. Our words that can foment even more discord, that can bring even more distress. Let us use our words to disseminate peace and love, and to show others through our actions that we have faith in the Creator, and that good, love, and harmony will prevail. May we feel this peace in our hearts. May we feel this peace in our homes. And may we gather together again, always in search of inspiring initiatives to help us in our journey of shining today and forever.